and welcome everyone to another Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. My name is Nina Joshi, and with us today we have a very special guest. We will be bringing on Sally Chung, who is an experienced design lead at BCG Digital Ventures. And as you know, for Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, we love questions. So if you have any during the chat for Sally, please feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be sure to find some time to get those questions answered for you. And so with that, we'd like to formally bring on our guest, Sally. Hi, Sally. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hi, Nina, and hi, everyone. I'm super happy to be part of Women's Health Tech series today.
Awesome. Well, maybe to kind of kick things off, would love if you can share with us a little bit more about your background and your experiences kind of leading up to your current role.
Sure. So I'm currently a startup designer at BCG Digital Ventures. I'm super passionate about applying human-centered design to incubate and scale startups. I started my career as a founding member at Saks Fifth Avenue's digital team, and eventually co-founded a beauty tech startup called Hello Ava. And then, yeah, like my journey went into BCG Digital Ventures, where currently I'm advising Fortune 100 to 500 companies and design-led innovation team. And yeah, we invest and incubate startups. And yeah, I would love to share some of my experience there, as well as my past experience today.
That's incredible. It sounds like such a fun and really interesting career, kind of, especially starting in like the startup space, and kind of being able to use that purview into something like BCG.
Right. Oh, and I also teach interaction design at School of Visual Arts. And the theme is the students, junior and senior designers, will be designing their startup idea with UX research, strategy, and UI design and branding design for entire year as well. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I love startup design, and I really believe that startup, like there should be more design founders in this industry to navigate and help other the industries to like innovate the ideas.
That is incredible. Oh my gosh, I love that. And we definitely, have a lot to talk about when it comes to really the role of design, and how that can really be leveraged to, move things forward within the startup space. But, using your expertise as an experienced designer, would love if you could share a little bit more with us about kind of the role that you play for BCG Digital Ventures, and then also kind of the role of something like product market fit. Because I'm imagining that that's so much of kind of what you're doing, in this current role.
Right. So as an experienced design lead, my role is to advise and incubate startups for our clients. And what my day-to-day looks like is very different, but as a lead, I often host a lot of workshops, like what is UX, to educating on clients, to I guess like sometimes at conferences as well. But what my day-to-day looks like is I'm defining the desirability. So when it comes to startup success, I'm sure we've talked about this a lot, desirability, viability, and feasibility, right? Like feasibility is on the technology, like can we build this? Right. Viability is on can we make money? And desirability is on the human, right? Like would the users use these products? So as an right, like without users, your product is nothing, right? And oftentimes a lot of startup founders, and sadly clients too, like they really put less value on that desirability side. So my role is to really bring in that validation on the desirability, as well as building the best UX on the product.
Wow, that's incredible. And I definitely agree about, at the end of the day, like what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and how do we really make this relevant and provide, that connection? How do we make it resonate with, potential customers?
Right. And we see that most entrepreneurs are focused on, one or two areas of, and most of the times those are like feasibility and viability, right? And I think it's also because that a lot of founders are coming from the business, like MBA background, or like their expertise is business, right? But Unfortunately, a lot of times like startups are failing because they're not meeting that desirability. So I
Mhm.
was looking into this data in I think it was CB Insights,
Mhm.
and 14 out of 20 reasons of why startups fail is related to users and product needs, which is
Wow.
desirability, right? And also the Fortune reported that top reasons that startups fail is because they make products that no one wants.
Yeah.
And it's just mind blowing as an experience designer because my expertise is really like validating that product market fit, like what the users would like to use your startup product, right? But it's just crazy, like how 14 out of 20 reasons why startup fails is because like startup founders are making a product that users don't want to use.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's and like so on the other hand, like I decided to run a hackathon. So like that's another thing that I do on the side. So I
Okay.
decided to run a hackathon with NYU Stern MBA. And right now it's with a School of Visual Arts, but it's going to go public sometime this or next year to it like
Oh,
more
cool.
universities and like bigger audience to
Yeah.
validate product market fit over the weekend because it started for me because I wanted to help the founders to validate that over the weekend and for
Okay.
my design students to build a quick portfolio over the weekend. So it's like a win-win situation. But during this weekend, startup founders are going to get together with UX designers to build a quick prototype and run user testings and, like validate their product market fit over the weekend, which they have never really conducted UX testing
Mhm.
before. Um, yeah.
That is an awesome opportunity, and definitely let us know, when the next cycle is, because we may have some founders that would be very interested in something like that.
For
Um,
sure. Mhm.
that's awesome. So it's kind of getting into product market fit and in this hackathon, would love if you could, share with us what is product market fit? And you touched on it a little bit, but why is it so important that that's, one of the first things that as a founder, you kind of ask yourself, during the building process?
Right. So if you think about the startup development phases, there are three phases, right?
Mhm.
First is, well, actually, there's six overall big arching phases. So ideation, where you're coming up with idea, concepting your idea, to
Mhm.
committing that you're going to start the startup, and then validating your startup, and then scaling the startup, and then establishing, and then that's like the growth phase.
Right.
So if you narrow it down to three phases, it's pre-startup, startup phase, and then growth stage. And then
Mhm.
that product market fit happens in the middle, which is that startup phase, which is commitment to validation to scaling. And that is when the founders are validating their minimum viable product, MVP product. And
Mhm.
then with that MVP product, they're validating their product market fit. So how do you ensure that your product meets the desirability, meeting users' needs? Is you really need to validate the product market fit. So, um, as a founder, you're first ideating that like $1 billion idea, rather it's like a painkiller or good to have, I don't know, like vitamin idea, those are like analogy, right?
Right.
And with your like company's vision and mission, I'm sure it's amazing. And
Mhm.
this is when the founders are most excited, that like ideation to concepting, right? And
Mhm.
then it goes into the minimal viable stage where founders are starting to build a minimal viable product and start validating its product idea, on that desirability, viability, and feasibility, and through like multiple validation methods. And through that stage, from UX angle and product market fit, like design angle, like
Yeah.
there's qualitative testings and quantitative testings that the founders can run through.
Right.
And this is when the company starts to see a little bit of potential where this company will grow, how the product vision and strategy and the roadmap will go into for those like digital product solutions. And then once the product is validated, then that's when the market needs the product and like those features. And then once it's really validated through multiple cycles, then that's when we see that these startups starts to grow. So
Mhm.
obviously this is a happy path. But through that middle cycle of
Yeah.
that product market fit, there's always these like churns, right? You
Mhm.
run into, I don't know, financial issues or operations and human resources issues.
Right.
But on top of that, like, I believe that this product features and this like product market fit needs to be the core of
Right.
the entire strategy of your startup success.
Right.
And yeah, just accept that there's going to be a lot of trials and errors that entrepreneurs will see,
Mhm.
but this product market fit is like the most important stage for the startup for their success.
Absolutely. It's like there's going to be, maybe barriers or things to do, but it's like all good. This is all important information, whatever that ends up being, that's going to really set the trajectory of, the company and the next steps. Yeah, thanks for like walking us through that. That was really helpful to kind of hear about it in these phases.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And would love, oh, go for it.
Oh no, yeah, just add one more thing. So then that startup product build process,
Mhm.
again, like I'm putting that like UX designer's hat on,
No, I love it.
like so first you have to start identifying who your target customers are. And this is when I think a lot of founders are making a mistake. Like they
Mhm.
often focus on like those customer segments instead of the
Mhm.
behaviors, right? So
Interesting.
instead of right, like, and like you're also a UX researcher, and we know we can all relate on this.
Mhm.
Instead of identifying, their ages or like where do they live, like how much are they gonna spend, like what are the CAC, you
Yeah.
really need to define the personas. So then the user personas, right? Like what is their behavior? Of course, the age, but goals for them to potentially using this product and features of yours, and what are their current frustrations, like what are their needs, like you need to get into that deep why they
Mhm.
need your product and identifying their digital behaviors and so on.
Mhm.
And then like going into so that was the first target customer. And
Right.
then the second is what is the underserved needs, right? Like then identifying like what do they need in the market, which goes into the competitor research and analysis. And you need to know who are your competitors, or else like you're going to build something that is already existing and Amazon can be your competitor. But
Mhm.
then a lot of times the founders are often focusing on the competitor analysis on the viability side and less on the product market fit or that product feature side, like digital solution side or that
Right.
personas, right? So so definitely need to define that underserved needs. Then then it goes into that product market fit and like that whole cycle of what is the product's value proposition, the feature set, and then set up UX strategy
Right.
and the research and design and validate its products through UX testings and quickly prototype the wireframe and just test for like 2 days with like, I don't know, like 30 minutes with a real customers. And it goes
Mhm.
into that iterative process.
Mhm.
And and then where it goes back to like revisiting the users and like keep testings. And then like you will see like those patterns, like if you are targeting the right customers, the personas, and are you building the right feature sets for your digital solution.
Totally. Yeah, and I like that you kind of differentiate between, of course, understanding demographic information. There is value to it, but kind of taking it a step further and talking about what are their behaviors, what are their purchasing decisions, who do they trust, I think really paints a much bigger picture. So things are kind of going into that granularity when it comes to really identifying who your potential customers are.
Mhm. That's right.
Very helpful. And then would love, you just through your experience, working at BCG and I think beyond, you've seen a lot of, done a lot of client work, projects, seen a lot of things. Would love if you could kind of give an example of, a past project or a past startup that was kind of developed to really address, a gap or a need in the market.
Right. Maybe first I can start with my personal example. So
Mhm.
back in 2016 or 17, I started my first startup called Hello Ava, which is still ongoing. Please check us out. It's still run by my amazing ex-co-founder, Sichi. So we had this idea where we wanted to build a platform where we'll get beauty product recommendations based on our skin condition. And at that time, like we didn't see much competitors. So then like just with our idea, like we literally stood in front of Sephora and we started to interview 200 customers coming out of Sephora, and we kind of got into a a little bit of problem. Um, but
I
that's
love it.
when
So
we,
scrappy.
right, so scrappy, right? And then my co-founders at the time, like they were at an MBA school, so it was like literally after their class, and we would just like be at the mall, and yeah, we would like just ask the customers like coming out and at Sephora, like, hey, like how are you purchasing these products? Like, what made you? And we learned a lot of things, and then after those 200 customers, we noticed that there, I mean, obviously like beauty market and fashion markets, like it's a lot of like marketing noise, right? But when it comes to purchasing beauty products, we noticed that the store associates role was quite big, or like they were listening to their like family members or friends who completely has different skincare type or environmental factors that they have.
Mhm.
So then we developed 16 different skincare types that people can get personalized recommendations based on their skincare. And then on top of that, we decided to bring in like dermatologists and estheticians to consult them, because even let's say like Nina, you and I have same different as I mean same skincare type,
Mhm.
because we're women, like based on our hormones levels, or like based on you live in LA where it's like super dry versus me living in New York super humid, like those like environmental factors can be
Right.
kicked into those like product decisions. So then we
Mhm.
decided to bring in those personalization, and then like we would keep on testing, right? Like scrappy methods, like bring in
Mhm.
our family members, like friend members, but also like strangers. And then we would also like reach out back to those people who we have met at the shopping mall and be like, hey, like, do you remember us? Like, we'll give you like free product. Like, can you talk to us? And then it
Yeah.
was like keep on going and going. So initially, we were developing a skincare device, but we decided to pivot into a chatbot that simply on the
Mm.
back end will have, it's not even an algorithm in the beginning. Like now we do have very rich algorithm, but back then it was like a if else statement. Like if user says they are living in New York, then we would bring them to like this questionnaire, and then like we would define them into a skincare type, and then our dermatologist or esthetician will look into their, those
Mm.
questionnaires like answers, and
Yeah.
then like have a consultation. So then we have pivoted, and then that saved us $200,000,
Wow.
because I know, because just to develop one product prototype, like physical prototype, was
Yeah.
$200,000. And then guess
Mhm.
what? It also saved my time to visit these factories and these labs, because I was
Yeah.
spending so much time like going into overseas like factories and meet these like people to develop this hardware device, and it was a big barrier for us, and it
Right.
saved us. Yeah, it saved our it saved us from like that meeting that desirability, feasibility,
Mhm.
and as well as viability. So that was like the first initial stage, and then we kept on iterating our features and our product through lots of testings.
Yeah.
And from our work at BC Digital Ventures, I mean, I can't really like share a lot of examples, but I can
Right.
definitely share this one example that we have launched. But before that, there is also a really famous example from Amazon as well as IBM. So
Mhm.
IBM helped like design thinking in their organization over 3 years, and it penetrated like one quarter of their entire portfolio, enabling like nearly like $90 million in
Wow.
increased profit. And you can see their article about this. Like there's like a whole study and UX study about this. And
Mhm.
there's another example from Amazon where this was like back in the days when Amazon was not the Amazon right now. um, Instead of so at that time, like for the users, in order for them to like check out, they had to sign up, and
Mhm.
there was no checkout as a guest option. So that
Mm.
like call to action, so enabling that like one call to action button on Amazon checkout to continue as a guest to check out, that I heard like that revenue went up like $100 million. So there's like a,
Wow.
yeah, like crazy UX study about that.
Mhm.
And yeah, like
Those are
Boston
awesome.
Consulting Group. Yeah, yeah. And Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey, and like we know that like how design's impact on business can no longer be questioned, and it is not questionable. And that's why at Boston Consulting Group, like we hire and we bring in the top-notch design professionals from user research background, as well as like UX design to like branding, to like bring in those like the best insights for our clients, and we're no longer just focusing on the design.
Totally.
Yeah, so like one of the example that I can share is Marlowe. So check out, if you wear contact lenses, please check us
I
out,
definitely
Marlowe.
do.
So this was a venture that we created with Alcon, and Alcon is one of the largest eye care product manufacturing company in the world.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and then they essentially came to us and they asked us, like, hey, like, can you guys innovate the eye care industry for us, where their as a client, like their problem was they wanted to be closer to the eye patients, as well as the eye care practitioners, which are the doctors. And then they wanted to have like a whole ecosystem where they can go like long term. So initially, I was part of their validation phase of, we had an idea, but we had to validate the desirability, viability, and feasibility. And we had a lot of like startup ideas, and then we narrowed it down, and then we essentially validated 4 ideas during that 3 months of period of time. And how we run projects, where we call them ventures at Digital Ventures, is quite different from the traditional Boston Consulting Group. So we're all about that startup and validation and build. So with that, like core ideas, we went out to the market and did ethnographic research to UX testing, and really like launching this idea quickly into the market, and see, like what is the cost going to be for the next 5 years, to the build cost, but also what is our going to be business plan, as well as the operations and build plan, and how is this startup going to evolve in the next 5 years, and what is the product going to be, and the product offerings. So there's all these like factors to consider in when we are building startups and validating the startup ideas with our clients. So with Marlowe, we decided to focus on the first, like the minimal viable product for the first year. So when we were incubating, we first were focusing on the purchasing experience, because we saw that there was it's like basically like our patients would go to like 1-800-contactlens.com, or like third-party sites, instead of like, there's no platform to really like purchase a contact lens directly from Alcon, obviously. But then their frustration was also like, they wanted a smooth and contactless interactions with their eye health doctor, because the current journey was that they had to call their eye health doctor and like talk to the administration, and then they would have to send the like, I don't know, healthcare records to the 1-800-contactlens.com, and it's like and then there's like a gap between those days, and then like sometimes it gets lost, and there's like a whole frustration, right? So we're like, okay, let's just focus on like the baseline. It's just going to simplest be at that, like, like people are going to buy contact lens and talk to the doctor, and then with like one click, right? So we focus on that. And then afterwards, like when we first launched it, like we saw that like there was like a huge, I think it was like, when we launched the pilot, it was like 89% of conversion rate of patients who have participated were like satisfied, as well as the ECP doctors, as well as, like the orders being fulfilled in this like pilot testing was hugely successful. So then that was when we validated our product market fit, just like that, within few weeks. So then we rolled out into the market, and then we saw that I think it was like nearly 90% or 90 something percent of eye care practitioners' practice satisfaction went up. because they didn't have to deal with, like third parties.
Administrative nonsense.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like, because they already have so much going on, but then they have to pick up their phone calls and like, get all that like emails communication. It's like very draining as office administrator as well as
Totally.
like from doctor's side, right? And
Yeah.
from this platform, like it reduced their effort and time on their like healthcare the doctor side.
Yeah.
And also they were also very, like satisfied with their how it's this platform simplify their job. And the patients, I believe it was like 77% reported that they felt like they can now complete their online ordering just like simple as that, because a lot of patients, like they would
Yep.
just go to a physical store and purchase because they just really didn't like those like online offerings.
Mhm.
And
Red market
yeah,
fit.
like right, and
The
then
power of it.
for sure, and it obviously saved the staff time. So
Totally.
yeah, so Marlowe is out in the market, and then the next phase is where we are going to implement the digital eye health assessment into their platform. And then like it's like keep evolving, right? So then
Yeah. Very
at
iterative.
BC, yeah, and it's an iterative process. But first, like we need to tackle that first like baseline proof of concept and run the pilot to validate the product market fit. You're not going to, build a flying car over the 5 years, right? Like you first
Yeah.
have to, build a, I don't know, get a like bicycle and then
Yeah,
see
you
if
can
it's
work your way
running,
up.
and then right.
I love that. I definitely
Yes.
agree. I mean, I think just being able to like having you share these real world examples of, this is what it actually looks like to incorporate product market fit, to really go through that process, I think has been really, really helpful. And I also realized that it's 10 o'clock already, or 1 o'clock your time already. I just can't believe we sped through 30 minutes. I think there's still so much that we can talk about. So we definitely need to do a part 2 with Sally. And for anyone in the audience, if you have any other questions around product market fit or want to get her insight, her LinkedIn information is on the chat, so please feel free to reach out to her. So just to wrap up, we have our next session next week with Verbena, so please be sure to check that out. We also have our digital health symposium later in the month, so the registration information is in the chat. Wanted to give a huge shout out to Sally for, I think, just part 1 of our conversation, because I feel like there's still so much to kind of get into when it comes to really the role of design and the impact that design can make. So definitely be tuned, because we're going to be begging for her to come back for another conversation with us. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm just glad that I was able to share some of my humble experience with the team here. And thank you so much, Nina, and the team from Women's Health Tech.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sally. And thank you to our sponsors, Goodwin and With Them, for sponsoring this conversation. And thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.